The room laughed when Daniel pointed at her. Not loudly, not cruelly, just the kind of laugh that happens when something seems too obvious to be serious. She was standing by the bar in a simple gray dress. She didn't fit the room. Everyone there knew it. Daniel leaned toward Maxwell Hale, $2.7 billion, accustomed to winning everything, and made his offer. $1 million. Marry her. 6 months. Walk away. Maxwell looked at her. She didn't look back. Or so he thought. He said yes. What he didn't know, she had been waiting for this moment. For 3 years. And when Daniel finished his offer, she set her drink down and allowed herself the smallest smile. Not because she had won, because the game had finally begun. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from, because this one is going to split the room. Now let's get into it.
For 3 years, Maxwell Hale had made decisions about people without ever learning their names. Vivian Cole had been learning his for all 3 of them. Maxwell Hale did not get to $2. $7 billion by being sentimental. He got there by being right. About markets, about timing, about people. Especially about people. His father had taught him that sitting in the back of 11 years old of a courtroom in South Jersey, while a business partner his father had trusted for 16 years, walked away with everything. His father didn't recover from that. Maxwell did something different. He decided that trust was a liability he could not afford. By 38, he had built one of the largest commercial real estate portfolios on the East Coast. 17 office towers, 42 properties in 9 cities, a penthouse on the 31st floor of one of his own buildings, overlooking the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia. He had everything, and he trusted almost no one. The night of Daniel Ward's birthday party. The champagne was $340 a bottle, and the guest list was exactly the kind of people Maxwell spent time with: wealthy, competitive, and very comfortable with their own importance. Maxwell stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, glass in hand, half listening to a conversation about yacht insurance, when Daniel appeared at his shoulder with that particular grin. That meant he was about to say something he thought was very clever. "I've got a proposition for you," Daniel said. Maxwell didn't turn around. "Is it interesting?" "I'd say $1 million makes it interesting." That got his attention. Daniel gestured toward the far end of the room. "You see the woman by the bar?" Maxwell looked. He saw her. A woman in her early 30s, compact and still, with dark hair pulled back in a way that suggested she'd done it quickly and hadn't thought about it since. She was alone, nursing a drink with the casual patience of someone who was comfortable in her own company. Her dress was clean, but clearly not expensive. She didn't fit the room. "Who is she?" Maxwell asked. "Her name is Vivian Cole," Daniel said. "Senior accountant at a firm on Market Street. I know her through a mutual contact. She's not exactly your usual type, Maxwell." He paused for effect. "I'll bet you $1 million you won't marry her and stay married for 6 months." Maxwell looked at him. Daniel smiled. He had clearly expected resistance. What he hadn't expected was what Maxwell said next. "Tell me the terms." And then something happened that Maxwell Hale would not fully understand for a very long time. On the other side of the room, Vivian Cole set her glass down on the bar. She had heard everything. She was supposed to. The truth was this: Vivian Cole had planned for Maxwell Hale for 37 months. Not obsessively, not desperately. Carefully. The way she did everything 3 years ago. Her father's consulting firm had been mid-contract with a Hale Enterprises development project on the western side of the city, a revitalization effort that Raymond Cole had poured 5 years of work into. Maxwell Hale had pulled the funding. Quietly, without warning. The way powerful men sometimes did when something more profitable appeared. There was no malice in it. Raymond Cole was simply not worth the inconvenience of honoring the agreement. The contract dispute took 16 months. By then, Raymond Cole's firm was gone. His health had followed 6 months after that. He died on a Monday in February, alone in a house that had once felt like something he'd built, now something he was losing. Vivian was 31 when her father died. She was also pregnant. The stress of the year, the legal fights, the financial collapse, the long drives to the hospital, the nights sitting beside her father's bed, had taken more than she knew how to measure. She lost the pregnancy at 14 weeks. No one knew. She didn't talk about it. She went back to work on a Thursday. She kept her face very still in the elevator. And she decided, with the particular clarity that comes after you have already lost the things you cannot replace, that she would not waste what was left on anger. She would be methodical instead. She knew Maxwell Hale's name. She learned everything else. Their first meeting, the official one, the one Maxwell had arranged, was at a restaurant on Walnut Street that charged $60 for an appetizer. Vivian arrived in the same gray dress. Maxwell had expected her to be different in person somehow. Softer or more uncertain. Easier to read. She wasn't. She sat down across from him, looked at the menu once, set it aside, and said, "I know about the bet." He didn't react. "You know," he said, "I've known for 2 weeks. I have a friend who works with Daniel." She found it amusing. "I found it useful." Maxwell studied her, "And yet you're here." "And yet I'm here," Vivian agreed. 6 months isn't very long. People have done harder things for worse reasons. "I have conditions, though." He almost smiled. She laid out her conditions without hesitation. She would continue going to work. She would keep her own bank account. She would make her own decisions about her time, her meals, her appointments. She would not perform affection she didn't feel. She would not pretend this was something it wasn't. And if he tried to control or humiliate her, in any form, she would leave. Without discussion. Maxwell listened to all of it. "Fine," he said. She looked at him. "Just like that? Just like that." She studied him for a moment. Then she picked up the menu. "You should try the risotto," she said. "It's the only thing here that justifies what they charge." He looked at the menu. It was, he noted, the cheapest entree. The wedding was quiet, 20 people. City Hall, then a restaurant on South Street that Vivian had chosen. Not the kind of place Maxwell usually ate, but the food was honest, and the portions were real, and the waiter knew the owner's name. Maxwell wore a suit that cost more than some people's rent. Vivian wore a dark blue dress she'd had for 4 years. On her wrist was a watch that didn't match anything. An old Seikos, scratched on the face, the strap replaced twice. It had been her father's. She signed the marriage certificate with the pen the registrar handed her. Maxwell noticed the watch. He didn't say anything. The penthouse was 31 floors above the river. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Custom, everything. Vivian walked through it once. She didn't say it was beautiful. She said, "Which room has the best light in the morning?" He told her, "The northeast guest room." She moved her things into the northeast guest room. He had assumed she would try to change things. Redecorate. Upgrade her wardrobe on his credit card. Ask for a car or a weekend trip somewhere expensive. She didn't ask for any of it. She kept her hours, her routines, her careful life. She made her own coffee. She left for work at 7:40. She came home with takeout in paper bags from places on Chestnut Street. She did not try to become someone she wasn't. In the first weeks, Maxwell tried to establish the terms he was accustomed to. He rescheduled her meetings. She rescheduled them back. He arranged events where her presence was expected. She attended only the ones she found worthwhile. At one such event, a real estate industry dinner in Center City, he watched from across the room as she stood with a group of developers he'd known for 15 years. She was talking. They were listening. He moved closer. She was explaining zoning variance patterns in post-industrial redevelopment zones. The kind of technical detail most people in the room navigated through expensive consultants. She was explaining it without notes, without effort. One of the developers, a man named Garrett, was nodding slowly. That's a significant oversight in how most firms approach the permitting stage, Garrett said. Most firms don't look at the secondary applications, Vivian agreed. They focus on the primary and assume alignment. It rarely holds. Maxwell stood at the edge of their conversation and felt, for the first time since this had started, something he didn't entirely like. He had underestimated her. He wasn't sure yet by how much. I think about Maxwell in those early weeks, and I see something both familiar and quietly devastating. A man who had built an entire life around the premise that the people who made it were the ones who did not allow themselves to feel, who had mistaken hardness for strength. Strength and indifference are not the same thing, but it takes a very specific kind of person to make a man like Maxwell understand that. And Vivian Cole, it turned out, was exactly that kind of person. By the end of the second month, something had shifted. Maxwell didn't name it. He didn't try to. He found himself noticing, when she came home later than usual, he found himself interested in what she thought about things that had nothing to do with their arrangement. One evening she came home with that particular quiet. That meant something had happened, he asked. She'd told him her mother had been in the hospital that afternoon. A fainting spell. Nothing critical, but another sign of what the doctors had been monitoring for 2 years. She sat at the kitchen counter and said all of it in the flat, practical voice she used when she was working. Hard not to feel something. He said, "I'll make dinner." She looked at him. He had never made dinner. He made pasta, badly, with the wrong sauce. She ate it, without complaint. He sat across from her, and they didn't talk much. But she didn't leave the room, and later, he thought that was something. The money question came up 6 weeks in. His accountant flagged it. Maxwell had set up a joint household account, and Vivian had used it for exactly 3 things. Groceries, her mother's copay, and a new heating element for the dryer. He started wondering what she actually needed. He asked, one evening, directly, "My mother's medical bills are behind," she said. "The specialist appointments add up." He said, "Let me cover it." She said, "That's not necessary," he said. "It is to me." She was quiet. Then, "Why?" He didn't have a clean answer for that. "Because you're here," he finally said. "That's enough." She looked at him for a long time. She said, "Okay, just that." And she went back to what she was doing. If this story is staying with you, subscribe for more stories like this. We'll keep making them. Twist came on a Tuesday evening in November. Maxwell had come home early to find Vivian at the kitchen counter. A folder open in front of her. Her father's watch on her wrist. She didn't hear him come in. He saw his company's name at the top of one of the pages. She heard him then. She didn't close the folder. She looked up. And Maxwell understood in that single moment that something was about to change. "You should sit down," Vivian said. Her voice was the same, level, precise. But there was something underneath it now that had always been there, and that he was only now prepared to see. He sat. She placed her hands flat on the folder. "My father's name was Raymond Cole," she said. "He ran a consulting firm specializing in urban commercial development. He had a contract with your company 3 years ago. A project on the western side of the city. Revitalization plan, 5 years in the making." Maxwell went very still. "You pulled the funding," she continued, "without notice, without reason given. The dispute lasted 16 months. His firm didn't survive it. He didn't survive it. A beat. I knew who you were before Daniel ever walked up to you at that party. I knew about the bet before he made it." She held his gaze. "I made sure he would make it." Maxwell felt the air leave the room. "I'm not here to destroy you," she said. "I want to be clear about that. What I wanted was for you to sit across from someone whose life you changed, without ever knowing her name." Her eyes were steady. "I wanted you to know that Raymond Cole was a real person. That he had a daughter who ate cereal for dinner 3 nights a week, so he could make payroll for his staff, that he had a name and a face and a granddaughter he would have loved. That last word landed differently. Maxwell heard it. Granddaughter, he said quietly. I was pregnant, Vivian said, during the dispute. During the 16 months. She paused. I lost the pregnancy at 14 weeks. The silence that followed was the longest Maxwell had experienced in many years. I didn't know, Maxwell said. His voice sounded different to himself, smaller. No, Vivian said, you didn't. Because you never made yourself know. Because it was easier not to. She closed the folder. That's all I wanted you to understand. She stood up. You don't have to stay married, she said. 6 months was the agreement. You've kept it. You can go back to your life. And he couldn't move. Not because of the bet. Not because of the money. But because somewhere in the last 6 months, Vivian Cole had become the most real person in his life. And he had not done anything to deserve that. There is a kind of accountability that comes slowly. Not in a single dramatic moment. Not in a confession or a check written. It comes in the mornings, when you wake up and the first thing you feel is the weight of what you did. It comes when you realize that the version of yourself you have been defending, the efficient one, the strategic one, the one who didn't have time for sentiment, was not strength. It was a story you told yourself, so you wouldn't have to feel the cost of your decisions. Maxwell Hale sat in his penthouse for 3 days. He did not go to the office. He pulled every contract, every canceled deal, every company that had folded in the wake of his decisions. There were more than he expected. There were families he had never thought to count. He did not ask Vivian for forgiveness. He understood, now, that it was not his to ask for. What he did instead was start to act differently. He restructured 2 contracts he had previously canceled. He found 3 families whose small businesses had been affected by projects his company had absorbed and walked away from. He didn't announce any of it. He just did it. Vivian learned about it incrementally. One thing at a time. She didn't say much when she found out. She said, "Why?" he said. "Because Raymond Cole had a name. Because you did too. Because I should have known both a long time ago." She was quiet. She said, "That doesn't fix it." He said, "I know. I'm not trying to fix it. I'm trying to not make it worse. And I wonder how many of us have done something like this, not from malice, but from the particular blindness of not looking at the person on the other side of our decisions. How many times have we made someone a line in a spreadsheet when they were a name, a father, a daughter, a life? It was December when things shifted between them. Not dramatically, not all at once. She came home to find he had figured out how she took her coffee. 2 sugars, the milk added last, and had it ready on the counter. He came home the next week to find she had left 2 sections of a report on the kitchen table with was sticky, marking the parts she thought he'd find useful. They started having longer dinners. Not planned. Not arranged. Just 2 people who had stopped, pretending they weren't interested in what the other had to say. One evening she laughed at something he said. A real laugh, not polite. He realized he hadn't heard that before. He realized he wanted to hear it again. 6 months ended on a Wednesday. Maxwell said, "I don't want to stop." She waited. He said, "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know that's not what this is. I'm asking if you'd be willing to let me keep trying, to know you, the right way, whatever that looks like."
She picked up her coffee.
She said, "I'll think about it." She went to work. He stood in the kitchen and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Uncertain, hopeful, both at the same time. She came home that evening. She said, "I have conditions." He said, "Tell me." She said, "I won't disappear into your world. I keep my job, my life, my name. You don't make decisions about things that are mine without asking. And if you ever treat someone the way you treated my father, any person, anyone, I'll know." He said, "You'll know." She said, "I always know." He believed her. He said those terms are acceptable. She almost smiled. She said, I know they are. I wouldn't have offered them otherwise. I've seen this before. Not in a boardroom. In a much quieter place. There are people who spend years building walls so high. They forget there are people on the other side. And then someone comes along who doesn't try to knock the walls down. They just wait. With patience. That has nothing to do with weakness. That kind of patience is one of the harder things to find in the world. And harder still to deserve. Spring came slowly to Philadelphia. The trees along Kelly Drive came back in pale green, then darker, then full. Maxwell and Vivian walked there sometimes in the evenings. He had learned things about her that were not in any file. That she had been offered a position at a larger firm twice, and declined both times, because she liked being able to see her work matter directly. That she visited her mother on Sunday mornings and brought her the same pastry from the same bakery on Passyunk every single week, without fail. That she read history for pleasure. Real history, dense and contested, and had opinions about it. That she still wore her father's watch every day. One evening in April, they were sitting on the terrace. Vivian was reading. Maxwell was looking at the water. He said, without turning, I'm sorry about your father. She didn't look up right away. Then she said, I know. He said, I'm sorry about the baby. She was quiet for longer this time. Then she set her book down on her lap. She said, thank you, just that. They sat there for a while without talking. The city moved below them, indifferent and alive. And Maxwell felt for the first time in as long as he could remember, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He asked her to marry him properly in May. Not in a restaurant. Not with a ring from a jeweler who knew his name. He asked her, at her mother's kitchen table on a Sunday morning. After the pastry and the coffee, he said, I would like the chance to be someone you'd choose now, if you're willing. Vivian looked at him. Then she looked at her mother. Her mother said, he makes terrible pasta. Vivian laughed. The real one. She said, yes, the second wedding was 30 people. Her mother's church in South Philadelphia. Vivian wore a dress she had bought with her own money, cream-colored, simple. At the end of the ceremony, she rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, who would have thought it all started with a bet? He held her close. Who would have thought it'd turn into this? He said. 3 months later, she told him. She came in from the hallway and said, I need to tell you something. He looked up. She said, I'm pregnant. He put the book down. He stood up and crossed the room and held her, not the way powerful men hold things they're afraid to lose, but the way people hold each other when something real has happened. After a while, she said quietly, I want to name her after my father, if it's a girl. Ray, he said. She nodded. He said, that's a good name. She said, I know. The last thing Maxwell gave Vivian that year, not at Christmas, not at a birthday, just on an ordinary Thursday, was a watch. A Seiko. Old model. Scratch on the face. The strap replaced twice, by a watchmaker on South Street who had found the exact leather. It wasn't her father's watch. Nothing could be. But Maxwell had spent 3 weeks finding the closest thing. She opened the box and was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at him. She said, you found this. He said, I looked for it. She put it on her wrist beside her father's. 2 watches, side by side. Imperfect. Present. Real. The wealthy build monuments. The ones who have lost something learn to pay attention instead. Maxwell Hale had been wealthy for a long time. Learning to pay attention was harder. But he was trying. And Vivian Cole, who had been paying attention all her life, had decided that was enough to begin. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs it today. Subscribe for more stories like this one. And tell me in the comments, what was the moment that hit you hardest? We read everyone,